So shall we welcome Janet to the stage? So Janet's going to kick off. So Janet has an amazingly titled role of Director of Happiness at Timpson's.
Thank you, Janet.
It's an absolute pleasure, thank you.
It's nice to actually, because we've had two conversations already, but they've both been on Zoom, so it's nice to actually meet properly. We're really grateful that you could come and join us today. And everything that you do, we're going to talk about shortly, is completely aligned with what we do in Learn from Excellence. It's completely on board with the same philosophy. So I was giving a talk maybe a year or two ago at a criminology conference, of all places. One finds oneself in strange environments. And there was a guy in the audience called James Timpson, who's he has a senior role in the Prisons Reform Trust, I think it's called, one of the charities associated with prisons. Anyway, and he asked a question about positive feedback at the end, and then started to tell us a little bit about what he does in Timpson's. So you will have heard of Timpson's, the high street chain. It's more than just the cobblers and key cutters. There's actually a number of other firms and brands within the same company. So it's a pretty big high street company. I had a phone call with him afterwards, and he was telling me all the wonderful stuff that he did. It's really quite a different approach to management, which is successful. And then he said, look, you need to speak to Janet. And I said, who's Janet? He said, Janet's our Director of Happiness, which is such a cool role. So he's linked us up together, and we've had a couple of chats. And I also, funnily enough, not long after that, was introduced to Paul Devlin, who's going to be speaking next. I can't see Paul. Where are you, Paul? Who's fantastic, and you will love the messages that Paul's got for you. But he also said, oh, have you met Janet? Very well known. Okay, so we're just going to have a chat, if that's okay. And you guys, it always takes a bit of time to warm up, but start thinking about what kind of questions you want to ask. And I know by the end of the day we won't be able to shut you up, but just feel free to engage. You can use Slido, put your hand up, etc. Do you want to start?
Yeah. So I think the first question is, how did the role come about, and how did you get into that role? Because that story, I quite like that story.
Yes, it's really interesting. So my background is actually finance. So I joined Timpson's back in 2004 as a finance manager. And probably 10 years after that, I got the opportunity to run our warehouse. And not being practical at all, I spent the first 3 weeks constantly on the phone to my husband, who's an electrician, to say, how do I do this, what do I do that? I just wanted a real change and a challenge. I did that for a couple of years. And then we acquired a new business, a dry cleaning business. You'll know it as Johnson's Dry Cleaning. And whenever we acquire a business, we know that culturally it takes at least 5 years for people to get it. Not just to get us, but to get any change of culture, especially when it's a good culture. So James asked me to spend a day a week in our factory in Rugby. And I rocked up on day one, as we do when we acquire a business, to this group of people and announced that here we are, this is what we do, this is our culture. And they just looked at me and said, you are a crazy woman. And I said, yeah, I do accept I'm a crazy woman, but what we'll say is we will help, we'll support, and we will deliver. And if we don't do those things and help you, then you need to shout up, and we failed. And in all honesty, we don't really fail because we try so hard to improve culture at any level. So I spent a year doing that as well, 1 day a week in Rugby. And then in 2017, James said, our business is getting too big. I need to be out and about a lot more. I need someone to work with me to get out and about a lot more as well, to find out if our colleagues are happy. If they're not happy, why are they not happy? Are they being supported? And if they're not, why are they not being supported? Because we realise that if we've got great people behind us as a business, then we'll be a great business, okay? You can't be a great business if the people don't feel supported and happy. So my job was to get out and about. So I said to him, well, what shall I do when I get out and about? And he went, just do whatever you think. And that was the start of my career as the Director of Happiness, which started in January 2018. Little did I know, and I'm glad in a way that I didn't know, how important and how serious a role is. Because as you can imagine, telling your loved ones that you're not operations manager anymore, you're now a director of happiness. It wasn't an easy task, and I left it weeks and weeks before I told my husband, just because I knew he'd say, really? And clearly he did. But yeah, I'd urge any business, no matter what, to have somebody, I wouldn't say like me, somebody that does their own role, that does it their own way, but is there to support people who need that help. Somebody who will say, how are you today? And actually mean it, not somebody who's going to walk past and go, oh, how are you? What, you're not great? Okay, carry on. And that happens in a lot of businesses. It's really, really important to have a role like this. Call it what you may, director of anything. But we need to be supporting each other and being kind to each other, and also giving excellent customer service to each other. And that is what is behind the fact that our business is cash rich. And there's not many businesses nowadays that are actually cash rich. And we're proud to say by investing in our people. And when I say investing, I mean giving people time, giving people support, helping them flourish, giving them opportunities to be the best that they can be. And sometimes that's scary for people. But once they get past that and realise actually they're much better than they ever believed they could be, and that's how you flourish. So yes, in answer to your question, that's how it all started.
Yeah, there were some extra bits. So you said there about not telling your husband for weeks. I like that addition to the story. And interesting, isn't it? The whole sort of idea that it takes, I mean, how many hospitals merge and try and sort the culture out sort of straight away. And you said, it takes 5 years. So just kind of acknowledging that.
So I was going to ask you about what do we really mean by happiness? So, because we often talk about well-being and happiness, and there's this, like a big Venn diagram with intersections, and what do we really mean by that? And because that's kind of key, isn't it, to understanding if you're making progress in your role. Have you got a working definition for that?
So we don't do KPIs as such. That's one thing we don't do. What we do every year is send out a questionnaire. Whenever I ask people how many questions they have on their staff surveys, they say anywhere between 20 and 100. And they say, I get so fed up with filling this in, I actually don't really fill it in properly anyway. And then people say, how many do you have, Janet? And I say 1. They say 1 question. And the question that we send out is, how happy are you with the support from your line manager, area team? And that's it. And on it is unhappy faces up to happy faces, which is 1 to 10. And all they've got to do is circle that happy face, unhappy face, and put a comment on if they wish. If they don't want to comment, they don't need to. They don't have to put the name on it. The only name we ask is the name of the manager or the area manager. And every one of those questionnaires then goes to James Timpson, our CEO, who looks through them. And what he's interested in, is there a pattern? What is the theme this year? And what he really loves is not, oh, it's a 10 out of 10, my area manager's great. What he loves to hear is, my area manager's great, or my manager's great because when I lost a loved one recently, my mum passed away, that manager spent time with me, gave me time and support, and actually listened to me when I was really upset and suffering with grief. And those are the things that we really like to see. On the back of that, once we have got all those in, what we look at is who scored badly. Who scored really well. We need to recognise those superstars, those area managers, those managers that have scored really well. But also we need to understand those people in the bottom 5, in the bottom 10, why have they not scored? And usually it's because the manager or the area manager has not spent time with that person. And those are mostly the comments. I don't hear from my manager. I don't hear from my area manager. Whenever I ring, they don't answer the phone or they don't respond to me. And that is usually what we hear a lot. So what we will do is sit down with those people and say, look, this isn't good enough. And hopefully that they will improve. So it is all about people.
Thank you, yeah. It's really refreshing that, there's so much stuff you do at Timpson's that's quite new for us, I think, in the NHS. But imagine that, a staff survey with 1 question. We might get a slightly better response rate. And actually, it does all come down to, I think you can kind of aggregate your overall experience down to one simple scale, probably, if you actually think about it. But what you've done is, I'm sure other people have picked up on this, is you've recognized there's a link between support and happiness. So naturally, because what you're asking actually is how happy are you with the support you're getting, and we've kind of had a hunch that is one of the keys to engagement, people feeling valued at work, is how well they're supported by the immediate line manager or by their culture.
I do well-being surveys intermittently at work in our department, and I also ask people how supported they felt recently. And I've been doing it for, I don't know, several years now, so this must be sort of 6, 7 iterations, and there is always a correlation, or I probably can't say that sort of statistically, but an association between how supported people feel and their well-being. So the people who feel more supported have better well-being. And of course it may be, we don't know which comes first, but it just sort of fits with that kind of ethos. That's what we want from work, isn't it? And probably life generally, to kind of feel supported.
Definitely. And what we find as well is some of our toughest area managers are the ones that score really well. So it's not because we've got managers who just lay down and die and say, oh, of course you can have what you want. Of course I'll do this for you. Of course I'll do that for you. Of course I'll spend some money on you. It's about knowing and managing expectations. And I think it's good to see that we are a business as well. People often say to me, oh, your business is so soft and fluffy. It's like, actually, it's not. We're very resilient, we work hard, we're very dynamic, and we're very lean as a business. So everybody is really busy and works really, really hard. The one thing we do as a team is we work together to support one another, to make sure when times are difficult or something goes wrong, we stick together and we roll our sleeves up. We don't have a PR team, we don't have a marketing team. People often ring me and say, well, could I speak to the comms team, please? We haven't got one, I'm sorry. Well, can I speak to the people that do that? Actually, no, we just do what we need to do to get things done. And that's how it works, by being lean, by being conservative, by not wasting money. We don't throw money at people all the time. What we do is support people financially who need that support.
You do have a bit of a budget for kind of gifting and giving people special treats, don't you? And you have a lottery and things. Could you talk about some of those sort of perks and benefits?
Yes, I mean, we are really privileged. So we have what we call the Dreams Come True. And the Dreams Come True is, as I say, it's a dream, okay? So it's not my car's broken down, my dream is to have a brand new one. The dream is, I've not been to see my great aunt in Australia in 10 years, and I'd really like to take my family to go and see them, or I'd like to take the children to Disney World, things like that. And people can apply for that. So we don't really do budgets as such, okay? It's all about spending what you need to spend at the end of the day. And it's not because we waste money, it's just about doing what's right. But James will say, I'm prepared to spend £1 million a year on our great colleagues who have a dream of something. Now, people have had holidays, they've had dentistry done, they have had new cars, they've had new kitchens, they've had gardens done, you name it. But we don't just agree to things like this for anybody. We expect our colleagues to be superstars. We want superstars in our business. The reason for that is, why should I work with you if you're not a superstar? It's not fair on me. So as leaders, we need to make sure that we've got the right people in our business. I don't want to work with somebody that isn't great, because it could either drag me down or I'm going to have to work twice as hard to drag them along. So it's important, and we're not afraid to say that. It's really important. So what we will do is, somebody has a dream, we'll look at it, find out what it is, and then say, you know what, that person's a superstar. Of course, have time away from the business, go and enjoy yourself with your family, and enjoy that dream. And in return, those colleagues never, ever forget things like that. It's really good. On top of that, we have a weekly lottery. So every week, I randomly choose somebody within our business. Bear in mind, there's 5,000 colleagues. So I randomly choose somebody, and they will find out on a Monday that they've won £1,000, tax paid. That will go in their bank account on Monday afternoon. And the first they know about it is when their manager, or line manager, or area manager, rocks up with a petty cash tin that says, "You've won, you're amazing," and gives them £1,000 fake cash. Yeah. If it was real, the chances are the manager might have spent it on the way. So we do have to be careful. But yeah, and some people are just so emotional, and they'll say things like, "We've had a really hard time recently. I was struggling to pay the rent. Yeah, my car's broken down. I didn't know what to do, and now I've got £1,000. I'm going to sort the kids out for Christmas, especially this time of year." So yeah, every Monday, it's a really great benefit, and it's really good to see that positive experience and how happy it makes our colleagues.
You're not allowed to all leave and go and apply to work at Timpson's. Okay.
And we do recruit on personality, so please feel free.
Yeah. So actually, we were going to ask another question, but when I've listened to the recording that Adrian did with you, and you talked a little bit about how you recruit and kind of your philosophy around that. So it feels like maybe you could tell us a bit about that.
Of course. Yeah, so when we recruit on personality. Okay. That doesn't mean we want everyone to be loud, everybody to be quiet, everybody to be quirky. Everybody's different. But what we look for in a person is passion. What matters to them? Is it the dog? Do they enjoy reading? Is it poetry? Is it the family? Do they enjoy sport? We're looking for somebody who's got that something about them. That's something that makes them unique and special. And when we do interview, we often interview in places like Sainsbury's, or Tesco's, or Costa Coffee. And it's about finding out more about that person. We don't sit on a panel and throw questions at people. We chat about their lifestyle and, of course, about our business. But what we're looking for is Mr. Smart, Mrs. Happy, Mrs. Cheerful, Mrs. Passionate, whatever that is. Okay. For those of you that are my age and maybe a bit more mature, will remember the Mr. Men. Yeah, we'll all remember them. We actually visually, believe it or not, we do. It runs through our mind whenever we interview that we want 9s and 10s, we want superstars. So they are the Mr. and Mrs. Happy, on time, always early, prepared to work late if necessary. We don't want the 4s and 5s, the Mr. Late, Mrs. Couldn't care less, Mrs. Untidy, whatever that is. And we actually do that. When we're interviewing, we visualise the things like that. And yeah, that is mainly how we recruit. Of course, there are certain things, if you look at IT, you need certain experience, don't you? And I appreciate that. But what we say is, if we recruit on personality, we can train somebody to do a role. What we can't do is train somebody's personality. And it works really well for us.
Yeah, I recognise that. Unfortunately, I've always been known as Mr. Scruffy, so I don't think I would do very well at Timpson, unless there's an opening for that overall. Yeah. So when we went through the COVID waves, we were asked at the front line, if you like, to organise stuff. Prepare. I'm looking at Jill, who worked with me a few years ago, and had to just open another intensive care unit, and we were given autonomy to do quite a lot of stuff. And although it was immensely stressful and difficult, we were able to achieve so much because we had this autonomy. And actually that was quite rewarding. And I think, having spoken to you before, it sounds like that's something you really preserve for the area, for the managers and the store managers. So you let them do their own thing to some degree.
Of course, yeah. We want every colleague in our shop from day one to feel like it's theirs. People often say to me, "Are they franchised, your shops?" I say, "No, why do you ask that?" Because they say the colleague seemed to take pride and he was really keen to give great customer service. So I felt like obviously there's something in it for them. And I say, "No, actually, they get the salary, obviously, and any good manager will get a bonus." I said, but they're not driven by money. They're driven by standards. And you'll not get an excellent business that doesn't have excellent standards. And I'm talking, when I say standards, clean, tidy, neat environment, somebody looking smart, and, they are the fun for a customer walks in, and at that moment they'll see a colleague. Now that colleague, if it's not smart, doesn't care less, is on the phone, not interested, how good is that? It's really, really poor. So we do expect those standards. But what we say is, from day one, we'll give you the autonomy to give excellent customer service. And if you can't give that for any reason, then you pick up the phone, you speak to somebody and get some help. What we don't want is you not giving excellent customer service. But I have to say, by giving people freedom and autonomy, it makes them the best they can be. Once they've got over the shock of, oh, well, I've got to make decisions, then they can do it and they fly with it, and it makes them much happier because they feel like they achieved. Just like Adrian said, that they achieved in the pandemic. That's how our colleagues feel, because they can do, and they've got that freedom to do so.
Frustratingly, we're almost out of time. There was just one thing I thought we could get Janet just to quickly tell us about, and then we're going to have to rotate around. But Janet will be back for Q&A at the end of the session. This is something I think is tangible for all of us. Is you talk about the way James Timpson communicates with the whole organisation with a weekly WhatsApp video or something like that. It just occurred to me that that's something that's tangible we could all do. Our chief execs, our departmental leads could all learn from this, because there's something really helpful for all staff just to hear a short update from leadership. Right? Can you tell us how James does it?
Yeah, it's really important. And this started as soon as we went into the pandemic. James said to me, Janet, I'm going to do a quick video this week, just an update of what's what, because nobody had a clue about anything at that stage, which would have been in March, wasn't it? And he said, let me do this video and see what you think. Did a 2.5-minute video. I think he was at home at the time, talking about anything and everything. And then what I did, distributed it to various directors, senior managers, and asked them to distribute it to their teams. Okay, and it worked really well. And we've been doing it every week, every Friday, ever since. And there's not been a week since March 2020, that it hasn't gone out. Every Friday, either James will do an update, and it could be just thank yous. You know, thank you to the warehouse for the stock take, it was amazing. Talk about the news, talk about sales, absolutely anything. Or, unfortunately, you know, sometimes someone will pass away. It does happen in any business, doesn't it? And they might talk about that. And sometimes he'll say, Janet, will you do the video? Or, Janet, will you ask such and such a body to do the video? And what's great is it's a very raw video. It's not planned. You don't sit somewhere special. You do it wherever you are, and it makes it real. And we make sure that our colleagues get that information within 20 minutes, probably. You've got 5,000 people all watching something in real time. Because nowadays, people don't want to wait a week to hear some information being passed down that gets confusing and people misunderstand it. They want real time, and it's something that a lot of businesses could do and just either don't feel like doing it because they don't want to do a video, or they just haven't thought about it. But I would urge anybody to do it, because it works really well for everybody.
I think it involves being a bit vulnerable, doesn't it? And maybe that's what people are a bit scared of a little bit, just the sort of reality of it. And that's why it connects, probably. But actually, maybe we think it always has to be sort of polished. Thank you so much. There's Janet's podcast. Adrian will get it sorted and release it so you can hear a longer form conversation. But we'll get you back in a bit for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janet. Brilliant.
Thank you, everybody.